We got an interesting sort of article out of CBS Sports. The season is really coming into its own now. You never know what's going on too early in the season, and you never know what weird stuff is going to happen towards the end of the year, either when some teams have written off and other teams are looking simply to play the spoiler. But we're here kind of in the meat of the schedule, and so there is an article begging the question, who has it hardest going forward? And wouldn't you know it, the Kansas City Chiefs are pretty close to the top of that list after having played one of the hardest early season schedules I ever remember seeing. It seems it doesn't get too much easier from here. In an article titled Ranking the 5 NFL Teams with Scariest Remaining Strength of Schedule, Chiefs and Colts face brutal slates. Subtitled It's Halloween, so let's take a look at the teams who should be scared about what awaits them on the second half of their schedule. By John Breach from CBS Sports. We get this tied for second. I believe first was the Texans, and tied with the Chiefs for second was the Commanders. So tied for second, the Chiefs. The Chiefs have the second scariest remaining schedule, and that's mostly because they have a brutal November. They'll be playing 4 games during the month with a schedule that looks like this: at Bills, bye week, at Broncos, Colts, at Cowboys. They get just one more game, plus they have to play at I just ruined that entire sentence. They get just one home game, plus they have to play a Thursday road game on Thanksgiving in Dallas. Although their schedule is difficult, this is the Chiefs we're talking about, so they seem like a lock for the playoffs. But don't be surprised if their 9-year run atop the AFC West finally comes to an end. Remaining strength of schedule, 558. Games left versus teams above 500, 5. Bills, Colts, Chargers, Broncos, and Broncos, not to mention Dallas, who I don't think is a very good team this year, but they do look dangerous at times. So while I don't think that they are a threat to win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl and maybe not even make the playoffs, they are one of those teams that is just below that threshold that can ruin anybody else's weekend on any given Sunday. Predicted final record for the Chiefs, 12-5, and something is probably standing out to you immediately after that predicted record, despite the fact that the Chiefs have the projected second hardest schedule remaining, and that is this. They are projected as having the second most difficult schedule remaining, but they are only projected to lose 2 more games. They think that the Chiefs will get through the remainder of this season dropping only 2 games while winning out the rest of those games, meaning they could lose the Bills or the Colts or a Chargers or one of the Broncos games, but they won't lose more than 2 of those. That's a pretty good record, facing one of the harder schedules I ever remember seeing. Now, maybe this is just something that I don't often pay attention to, but golly, when you look at the teams the Chiefs have already played, and you look at the fact that the Chiefs could decide in large part, decide the AFC seeding for the playoffs over the next month, the entire playoff bracket over the next month, things are getting kind of weird for the Chiefs. Now, undoubtedly, this math is real, right? At this point, all of these teams, Bills, Colts, Chargers, and Broncos, are over 500. But this is the NFL. There will be pretenders among these contenders. We all know that. It is something that happens every year. You get around this point in the season, and all of a sudden, teams start playing more teams that are in their division and teams that maybe weren't front-loaded onto their schedule after a weak showing last year. One of those teams might be the Colts. Are the Colts pretenders or are they contenders this year? They're becoming a very popular pick in the pretender category. Sort of like a couple years ago when the Eagles started off so hot, but things went disastrously late for them. They are 7-1, but they did lose to the Rams by a touchdown in a game where Matt Stafford went for 375 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is hard to sell once you start getting into the playoffs. And when we start talking about that defense and the passing yards they give up, things don't look great for the Colts. Cam Ward just threw for 259 yards on them. And it is true that Cam Ward has thrown for over 200 yards every week of October, but he's the same guy that barely broke the 100-yard barrier against Houston in the final week of September. So 259 yards is 6 yards away from his career high, I believe, which was 265 this year. But that is a lot of yards to a rookie that has really sort of struggled from time to time. And it doesn't stop there. Jacoby Brissett threw for 320 yards against the Colts for the Cardinals this year. And if Jacoby Brissett is going to go for 320 yards against your defense for the Cardinals, guys, it could get real ugly versus someone like Patrick Mahomes, versus someone like Josh Allen. And it doesn't stop there either. Geno Smith threw for 228 yards against this defense. It might be that the Colts are pretenders. But if they are pretenders, I believe they're going to be pretenders in the way that sort of the early 2000s Chiefs were pretenders. They kind of remind me of those teams. A former cast-off quarterback, a very good running back, and a defense that gives up all the passing yards that there ever could be. And those Chiefs teams could jump up and bite people, and oftentimes they did. It just didn't happen once the playoffs started. So that might be exactly what the Colts find themselves in for. Remember all those Trent Green-led Kansas City Chiefs teams that started the season so hot, and then things kind of fizzled towards the end. So the Colts, are they contenders or pretenders? Depends on where you're sitting, but I think they have a pretty good claim to be pretenders on the season. Well, that takes us right down the list here to the Bills. The Bills are 5-2. They have some big-time scores on their side this season. They beat the Panthers 40-9, and they beat the Jets 30-10. Maybe that's a little classless, but when you can score points in the NFL, it does say good things about you. But they also beat the Ravens by the score of 41-40, the same Ravens that the Chiefs beat 37-20. And Lamar Jackson temporarily retired after that Chiefs game. I still do not believe that he was injured. I really don't. No one can convince me otherwise. And in that game, Derrick Henry averaged 9.4 yards per carry. Running games are very important once the playoffs start and conditions get nasty. So if you have a very bad run defense, it could spell problems once the playoffs start. The Falcons beat them in a game where Bijan Robinson averaged 8.9 yards per carry. That's basically a first down every time you touch the ball, and it didn't happen once, it happened twice this season with both Derrick Henry as well as Bijan Robinson, both averaging 9 to 9.4 yards per carry. So what about the Chargers? Well, the Chargers have already beaten the Chiefs once as they find themselves 5-3 on the season. But that's not all that the Chargers have done this year. The Chargers, the tale of the Chargers and why they might be pretenders rather than contenders, pardon me, can be told exclusively by talking about their losses on the season. The Chargers lost to the Commanders by 17 points. Very tough sell to say that you're going to march through the AFC side of the bracket in the playoffs when you lost to the Commanders by 17 points. Different Commanders team than the Chiefs played because they had Jaden Daniels, etc. Jaden Daniels has not been this year who he was last year. The Chargers lost to the Giants, which should be enough right there, but listen to this. The Chargers lost to the Giants in a game where the Giants' leading passer threw for 111 yards. Their leading rusher ran for 79 yards, and their leading receiver caught for 44 yards. That is an ugly, ugly game, and it takes some very serious brain power to figure out how to lose a game to a team whose quarterback threw for 111, running back ran for 79, and leading receiver caught 44 yards passing. So, the Chargers also lost to the Colts in a game where Justin Herbert threw for 420 yards and 3 touchdowns. Very difficult to throw for 420 yards and 3 touchdowns and find yourself on the losing end of things. Could the Chargers end up being pretenders? I think so. I think that the Chargers got very lucky in Week 1, and they caught a Chiefs team that was kind of off kilter and didn't get anything working for them, who were also missing their top 2 receivers. See, we don't hear a whole lot of excuses for the Kansas City Chiefs in that fashion, the way that, for example, the Lions like to make excuses about injuries, etc. All sorts of these teams like to make excuses about their losses. Then we have the Broncos. The Broncos are 6-2, but are they real? I think things are going to seriously start wobbling for the Broncos, and I think that the Broncos are a team, maybe uniquely in this group, that could get better as the season goes on. Obviously, all of these teams could get better as the year goes on, but I think that the Broncos are uniquely positioned to really come together as a team. Even though the Broncos just beat the Giants by a single point, that would have been a very, very bad loss. The Broncos are a couple weeks out from beating the Jets by 2 points, and that would have been a very, very embarrassing loss as well. But like we learned from the Chiefs last season, a win is a win. And no matter what the score is, as long as you get the W on the board, well, you get to play in the postseason. The Broncos' losses, however, are nothing to be embarrassed by. They lost to the Colts and the Chargers. So that also means that they have very few, what you would call, if this were college football, quality wins under their belt. They've won 6 games, but you're not looking at a murderer's row of competition that the Broncos have gone up against just yet. Things are going to turn up in the AFC in general the remainder of this season as the AFC West starts to play interdivision games and as the rest of the AFC starts to play each other as well. We will figure out, there's going to be at least 2 of these teams that are pretenders. We will figure out which ones they are very quickly over the course of the next 4-ish weeks. If I had to put money on who the pretenders are at this point, I think I would say the Colts and the Chargers. I think that's where I would put my money as far as who is not going to be as good as their record right now suggests come Week 18. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.